Anita White. Welcome to my show, Coaching Conversations. I'm a life coach in the St. Croix Valley, and I also have offices in St. Paul and in New Hope. The show's concept is about how we live out our divine purpose by focusing our intention. And I just have a heart-to-heart conversation on camera with someone in our valley or someone nearby. And today I'm talking with Jean Wood. And welcome, Jean.
Thank you, Anita. It's great to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. This is great. Jean, tell me a little bit about you and your life.
Well, I'm a native of the Midwest, right? I grew up over in River Falls, Wisconsin, and through my corporate life, I bounced all over the country, had some really unique experiences, and came back to the Twin Cities, still working for the same company, and decided at one point in my life it's enough, and I need to go out on my own. And so I've been out with my own business for the last, 2005, since 2005, I guess.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh, thanks. It's been a lot of fun.
Good. Well, that kind of brings us to our topic. Tell me a little bit about how you live out your intentions each day to follow that divine purpose in you. Because obviously something happened there where you went, this doesn't fit. So.
Well, I have always been a very intuitive individual. Not necessarily have I understood that I was until probably I walked away from corporate America in 2005, and about 2 years into my freedom, I met a lady who was actually teaching classes on intuition. And the point behind it was to help us as individuals understand that we can use that intuition to manage ourselves and our business. And she literally brought me to life from that standpoint.
Okay.
And so I build my plans on any given day. I try to do it the night before. But then when I get up in the morning, I usually have some corrections because of thoughts through the evening. And I usually follow those corrections. It's one of those, sometimes it's an interesting trying to explain that to people. Yeah. But I know where I need to go, I know who I am, and I feel very comfortable with all those pieces. So we go out and meet people, talk to people, and or do things that will try to attract customers to my business.
I always ask people what their passion is. What's their bliss? And how do they know when they're there? Oh gosh.
I think my true passion really is helping people. It's a hard one from a standpoint of I'm an individual who I gather my strength through conversation. Back in my corporate day, my management people could always tell if I was having a bad day because I wasn't in the office. I was out on the factory floor talking to my employees. Filling up my bucket, and it was always interesting. And again, it's one of those things that took me a while to really kind of let that knowledge seep into me to really understand, gosh, if I want to have a good day, I need to have people to talk to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very interesting.
So what did you find out about yourself when that class about intuition? Is there a way, because I know that some people will visualize what they need to do, or they get a sense about it, or just know it, or is there a certain style that you?
I don't know that I could say a certain style. I think perhaps the biggest component of it was just trust. I know reading and listening and hearing people talk about intuition and applying it to their daily life. I personally think we all have those moments. The question is, are we aware of that within ourselves? Do we, I'll say, hear the signals, so to speak? Do we recognize when it's happening, when we see something that doesn't make sense, or we see something that we know we should take an action on, and do we do something about it? And honestly, it took me some time to get to the point of trusting that. And the first time I did was in her class, and she helped me understand that, it's pretty much accurate. I need to be taking action when I trust myself with those things, and literally changed my way of life.
Yeah. Well, and my experience has been where people who will spend enough time with themselves to match their insides with their outsides, to take the time to get to know themselves, that when they're with other people, they're not reacting as much, they're responding. And they're
Right.
not responding to what the exterior thing is going on. They're responding to the internal thing that they're listening to.
Yes.
But people don't slow down enough to listen to, okay, what's going on with me here?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I reacting this way? What is the appropriate thing to do here? Instead of, and I've had people say, it's up to me to like say what I feel when I feel it, and you just get blasted into next week with whatever they're feeling. But then there are those that will go, okay, now I understand there's something going on here. Maybe they never get to it. And then there are those of us that say, okay, I need to do something with that, and I need to honor that in me. And that's, for me, that's that deep spiritual piece where my head and my heart have the spirit in the conversation. So it's not all like I feel all this and my emotions are running me, or I'm over intellectualizing it, where all I can do is really think about it, obsess about it, and figure it out, and not really be able to do anything. But to have that spiritual self go, okay, this is how you need to deal with this. And it's not right now. And maybe sometimes where it's a adverse situation or just really uncomfortable. You know, when people are in public and they start telling me their real deep stuff, and all of a sudden I'm like, this is not the place for that.
Yeah,
so then literally I will step back, just physically step back, and they'll get that that's in a boundary, that's another boundary for me, that we don't do that out here. So to be able to create that space and to be able to go, okay, what's the inside thing going on? And let that spiritual self communicate on the right thing to do next.
Well, and I think one of the things that when I first started to, once I was able to overcome the trust factor with myself, it drove me to a new level of listening. I would readily admit that prior to really trusting, I probably was too much into talking and not listening too much at all. From the other party's standpoint. And I've actually found myself in conversations with people, and they would be going off on some things that I would stop them and say, so why did you just tell me that? And in my heart, I think I already know. And they will look at you really hard because they were trying to impress you with something, and it really had nothing to do with what they wanted to say to you. And then that's when you really get to a rich dialogue. It's amazing to me.
And your point is?
And your point is, and why did you do that?
My teenager does that all the time, and your point is?
Because they're watching you, how you're speaking. They don't care about the words. They can see and sense and feel where you're at. And you have to listen. And teenagers are really good at it. Kids are really good at it.
Well, and there's those people that will never watch what you're doing, that they've just got their agenda on and doing it. And for me, it's that a defense then, that they are afraid of that intimacy that is created with that kind of intuition. Because I have friends that'll go, you know something, I didn't go to that event because something told me that it wasn't going to be right, I wasn't in the right place, and you know, to be able to follow that instinct, and we have basically, that's what we have when we get here is instinct. And somehow with work and family and social activities, we get so outside focused that we're not in that primal state of, okay, what's safe and what's not safe, unless we're in a fear state or an anger state. So when we're in that space where we have that calm and that peaceful side of us, and we're kind of living from our heart, then we follow that instinct a little easier. It's keener, because it's like, well, I don't need to know the reason why. All I need to know is that it's not going to work right now.
I just need to know that.
I need to do something.
I've done the same thing. I've actually canceled plans to go to networking events, or just from a perspective that I wasn't feeling energized, or I felt something was just not right, or just I had this feeling come across, and I would check with people who had gone afterwards, and it was not a good event, or always some things that seemed like they came out of it. So I've in the last I can't say I mastered the skills just from a perspective. I think it's something we learn every day when we're talking to people.
We do. Well, and I think I'm going to miss out on something if I've made a commitment. So it's like, okay, I made the commitment now. I need to get to that because I don't want to disappoint them. And then I think to myself, but is it going to disappoint me?
Yeah, it really is about us as individuals.
Because I can string things together, activities through the day, and by the end of the day, am I going to be the best me showing up there then? And I've gone to different events where I've gone in and I have felt that vulnerability, and like, oh, I don't know if I really want to be here. And I've had people report later, good friends of mine, that there was just something going on with you, and I didn't even feel like I could talk to you.
Were you okay?
So, that was it. So it was like I had the invisible protective shield up, and I didn't really know it was there, and other people saw it there. So it harmed my ability to really communicate. So it really was dysfunctional anyway.
Yeah, it's as clear
Yeah.
as night and day for
Yeah.
them as they're
Yeah.
looking at you. You know? Yeah, it's an interesting piece of our kind of human puzzle that it's there. We just can't see it all the time.
Yeah.
But the more tuned in we are, the better.
Yeah. Well, and I think that most people are very empathic, where they can sense how other people are feeling.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily always honor that.
Yes.
And they don't always honor how they are in that interaction. So did I bring that on because of how I was with you? Or did you bring that on because we're in our energy fields. We're sitting here, electricity is going on everywhere,
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
can sense that about people.
Yep.
Is it fight or flight, or is it something that we want to like settle in with?
Well, I know you and I were talking about like, how do we create raving fans?
Yeah.
But I think ultimately part of that question of creating raving fans lies with what you just said. That when you're really paying attention and you're really, it's almost like maximizing the energy.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can tell when you are, and you can tell when I am.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that brings an entirely new level of confidence and trust and reliability for us as from a kind of a professional relationship. And that's the beginning. That's the soul of that raving fan component.
Well, and if I don't take the time to fill up my cup and find the things that help me find peace. One of the things I do with clients is that come in with depression or anxiety, a lot of fear-based stuff, is I'll have them assess where their happy place is. And really acclimate them there to create a visual for them so they can actually see their happy place. And I bring up the flavors and the signs and the you know, what's in there, what they can hear, and you know, so they're in that happy place. But if I'm not in that happy place when I'm there, they're not going to get there. I'm not going to articulate it. Because it's kind of like 7% is our tone and what I'm saying to you, and the rest is body language. So what's being absorbed is in that frequency or that energy field. You know, how we respond to each other.
One of my most favorite questions that I like to ask people when I'm working on a relationship that I want to kind of propel forward because of my inner sense is where do you go and what do you do when you go to your happy place?
Yeah.
Do you have a happy place?
You do the same thing.
and you get people starting to talk about that. Some people run away. You can watch them emotionally. They're just kind of in this, oh, this is getting weird now. I think I'll leave. And they'll still physically be there, but they won't be part of the conversation. And of course, that to me is it wasn't meant to be anyway. Because again, that gets back to that attraction component.
Well, and it's an internal focus instead of an external focus. It's like, what is it that really drives my heart? And that kind of brings me to another question. Because just before we got on camera, we had a conversation, and you said, the wizard in me says this about my life. And they went, okay, no, there is a focus, that there's a divine purpose in that, and you came to that through a whole lot of different ways. So tell me more about that.
Well, I have just this broad array of or wealth of background experiences that, quite frankly, there's almost anything that I want to do, I can do and be successful. But what I began to understand after I left the corporate world is that, but there are a few things that really warm my heart. And so I've come to the point where I pay attention to that a lot. And over the last, probably started about 2 years ago, I was being pulled into, because I do a lot of public speaking within my networking organization. And when I say public speaking, it's at small groups, 10, 15, 20, maybe 50 people. And the people were wanting to pull me into the big public speaking arena. And in the last 6 months or so, I've done several public speaking in non-networking settings. And clearly and truly, I enjoy doing that. From an outward standpoint, I connect well with the audiences. We have some great conversations during and after the meetings, especially. And the however to it is, after I did the last 2 or 3, what I began to realize is that it wasn't fueling anything in my heart. There wasn't anything there that was. Would I get excited about doing it? Well, sort of, but did I really feel personally satisfied that that's what my calling is or that's what I should be doing? And I've had 2 or 3 conversations with I always call it triangulating around a question, right? You start asking people different questions, and a different piece of the puzzle becomes exposed. And I've had some great conversations with some very trusted friends, and the aha was, you know, doing that public speaking in large groups, that's not where I'm supposed to be. And it was, I said it to my the last person who I was talking to, and it's like, interesting, you've just helped me. But when I said that, the relief that I felt by saying that, I know where I need to be. I knew where I needed to be, but I couldn't recognize it until I made the statement.
We have to find out what we don't want to be before we know what we want to be, and then be able to put that down and then pick up the next thing. So where do you want to be?
Exactly. And so I still do public speaking within my networking organizations, and where I really want to be is I like to bill myself as being a modern day Mr. Wizard, because I am a chemical engineer, and one of the things that, depending on which side of the frame you look at, I'm either blessed or cursed with sometimes my world, if I'm operating as a chemical engineer, the world is very complex and complicated, and you know, like Snoopy, the bees are just buzzing all over your head. But for the most part, that's not true. But I have the ability to take really complex things and explain it in very simple terms. And people look at me. I might talk about silly things about air quality, and I start out with, so what's in the air that we're breathing? and I can tell people, you know, those 10,000 points of detail if you wanted to. But I can also break it down into something very simple and get people to understand. And that's where I need to be. And it still fulfills my need to be talking to people, maybe more in a public venue, but it gives me a deeper sense of I can help people more doing that than I can anything else.
So you said it, that was your calling.
That's my calling, yep.
So how did that come to you, other than knowing what you didn't want to do? What was the other part of that? Well,
I've been doing these, I call them workshops or seminars for quite some time. I haven't really delved into the commercialization or commercializing.
Are you presenting the workshops then? Okay.
Yep. And I probably have done a dozen workshops in the last 5 years, 4 years. And I've really perfected it over time. And I've taken some people who, one of my last workshops was at a person's home, and we had like 6 or 8 or 10 people there. And the host was saying to me that, well, this one lady, she's a registered nurse and she knows everything by the book, and I don't know if you need to be careful, but you know, she's going to hold you accountable for what you say. And we probably won't get her convinced of anything, from a natural products, things about air you breathe and things you eat, that kind of thing. And it was about 16 minutes in the conversation, she threw her notebook on the table and she said, all right, I'm in. This guy knows what he's talking about.
Wow. And then everyone else followed because she had such credibility.
Everyone else followed. And the host, she looked at me and her mouth was agape. And she's, wow, I would never have bet that would have happened. That's where I need to be. In that particular day, I was able to influence 12 or 14 people to change their way of living to help them be healthier in every aspect. Just a little bit here and a little bit there, but in the engineering world, we always talk about the devil is in the detail. And it is in life, the devil is in the detail.
Yeah. Well, and you and I are on the same page that way.
Yep.
And my education is how people work through their files and their filters in their brain.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
and I'm getting more in depth with the chemistry involved in the human body. You know, not just you hear me talking about the electricity. And, you know, I've had a lot of, because I was in a corporate job with the electric company, so I have a different respect for electricity.
Yes.
And to be able to convert that into the energy that we have in our bodies and how it works and how it's different, because we have the chemistry, we have our DNA, and our DNA is being read, and how some of the patterns you and I have and other people have, and that limiting beliefs or values or whatever it is, those patterns don't come just from our experience.
Right.
They come from that coding that came through generations. I did some research in my family system a long time ago, genealogy back on my family side, either side. And it was just in the last couple of years ago where I realized that I was doing a pattern, and when I looked at the pattern that I was doing, why do I keep doing this? I get the negative results, I get the negative results, I get the negative results, and then I look back, and it was on my mother's side of the family in the female ancestry. And it was 3 generations back.
Wow.
And that's all I could really know, but I could see why the pattern started. It was important for survival. And so to be able to help people heal in that, you know, okay, it is a limiting belief. It is a value that it's not mine, it's someone else's. But I keep bringing that in and bringing that in, and it keeps me from being successful at what I want to do.
I'm smiling to myself because I've asked people, so why do you do that? And it can be a man or a woman, doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
A wife would say, well, my mother taught me.
Yeah.
Really?
Ancestry. Yeah.
So why does your mother do it? And she went back and asked her mother, and well, her grandmother taught her.
Yeah.
Her mother, and it's one of those things that it's been taught through the
it's through our language.
The family structure.
It's how we say things, and that's the linguistics. We all have that, and that's how it's shared, is linguistically all the way through, and then that message is recorded, like on our hard drive, and we can just revisit it and visit it. But then there's also the pieces that are unconscious. So I've got a couple of brothers, and I've got 3 sons. And I was visiting my brother, my older brother, he's 2 years older than me, a few months ago, and I was looking at him, and he had the same mannerisms as my oldest son. Now, they don't interact on a daily basis, and they never have, and maybe they've seen each other maybe twice a year, the whole 33 years my oldest son's been around. And I'm going, how does that happen? So if the mannerisms physically are there, how can they not be there emotionally and spiritually, intellectually? How can those mannerisms not be picked up without it being even told? So if you say, why do you do that? Well, a lot of people, I don't know. People come to see me with their problem, they say, I don't know.
I went through a very unique experience with my brother, mother, and father all died within a 5-month time period. And there was a number of us cleaning out their house because it was being sold and all those kind of things. And my dad was a farmer who always had his go-to-town overalls hanging in the bathroom. And so here I am cleaning out the bathroom, and there's his overalls hanging on the wall. And I decided to put his overalls on and see how they fit.
Wow. And
he had a pair of boots there, and I put his overalls on, and it was the awakening in the sudden, instant, 100% realization of, I am my father's son. His overalls fit me to an exact T. The length of the straps, the size of the waist, the length of the inseam.
Wow.
I put his shoes on, and they felt like my shoes.
Wow.
And I stood there, and I looked in the mirror.
I would have cried.
Well, I think I probably did. It took me a long time to get out of the bathroom because I had helpers, and I walked out of the bathroom, and one lady screamed, and she thought she'd seen, they called my dad Woody all the time. They thought they'd seen Woody. He said, you walked out, and you looked so much like your father. And I said, you know what? I am my father. And there was that moment that that really set in that I am my father's son. 100%. I find myself with the mannerisms, and he's long since gone. And it's on one hand you can say, gosh, that's kind of strange. And I just smile and say, yeah, I am.
It's the DNA.
It's the DNA.
It's the DNA. You know, we got 50 trillion cells in our bodies. You know, and all of them are calibrating and reading that DNA and trying to figure out how we're going to react. How can it not be?
I mean, it took me a long time to realize that. I described my father as he's the quintessential dirt farmer. He loved farming. He would go out and watch his crops grow, as he said. When the wind blew, he could hear his corn squeaking. I mean, just, you know, like, oh, come on, Dad. And in my life today, I live in a townhouse and, you know, in the Twin Cities, and I have a deck full of tomato plants.
Beautiful.
And where do I find my joy in the summertime? Growing tomatoes.
Watching things.
So I was sitting out one day watching my tomatoes, and I started to smile and kind of go,
it's there too.
It's there too. Dad watched corn, I'm watching my tomato plants. It's just so funny.
That is really cool. Well, we got to wrap up.
Okay.
We've got a couple of minutes, so do you have any last ideas?
This has been enjoyable.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. We could go on for hours. I
We
know
have.
we could.
Yeah, this is good, Jean. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're entirely
Thank you
welcome.
for being on my show.
You're entirely welcome.
Okay. And thank you for joining me again. My name is Anita White. I'm a life coach with WhiteLighter Coaching Quest. And I have one last thought for you today. Just remember, no matter who you think you are always so much more than that.